Welcome to Prism, podcast of the University of the Philippines College of Architecture. The Prism project is an electronic newsletter published by the gender team at the University of the Philippines College of Architecture, published 3 times every semester. It informs UP College of Architecture faculty, staff, and students of relevant developments, updates, events, and news concerning gender equality and women's empowerment in our community, profession, and extension work. The gender team also shares best practices of the work of colleagues and students. No matter who you are or the color of your skin, you are welcome in Prism.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for tuning in to Prism Podcast. I am Sarah Musavi, your gender and development focal point for the College of Architecture at the University of the Philippines. June is Pride Month, and we celebrate how love is love. I would like to welcome you to our Pride Month podcast 2023 to celebrate diversity, inclusivity, and equity. Let's stand together to love and acceptance. And happy Pride Month. We have with us Xander Luxon from our very own UPCA Gender and Development team. He's also our Student Relations Officer. Hi, Xander.
Hi, Sarah. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very excited for this podcast.
Thanks for
How
inviting.
Sure. We're very happy to have you. And how have you celebrated Pride this year, Xander?
Well, actually, to be honest, like I've been thinking of, I haven't really celebrated at all. I know that last weekend was Quezon City Pride, and I actually regret not having gone. I was out of town last weekend. I saw all the photos on Facebook, and honestly, I was like super pleasantly surprised at how actually the event was so big. I think it had a huge following. I saw photos where they filled the entire Quezon City Memorial Circle with people. So it's really, really nice how like you see that an event like this, such as Pride, is gaining so much attention and traction, and you can see how all the young people now are starting to join into this movement. I remember though last year, Sarah, if I could just like talk about it a little bit. I was in Hanoi with my partner. Was it September last year? And September is Pride Month in Hanoi. And we were like, let's go, let's join this. It's gonna be cool. And so we joined the Pride March in Hanoi. And obviously it was a much smaller event, but like it was so nice because when we joined, you could really feel the energy of hope with all the young people. Especially considering the political situation in Vietnam, you would expect things like that to be probably non-existent, or things like that to be much more tame. But wow, the energy was so good. Of course, the event was much smaller, but you could really feel the hope and the excitement with all the kids. And everyone was so young. I'm not kidding, Sarah. Like everyone was probably between 16 and 21. So
Wow.
obviously felt very old.
No. Well, I'm
Yeah.
sure it was so much fun. I also attended our GAD night last Friday. Remember,
Right.
Sandra? Yeah, and it was so much fun. I can't imagine. It was so exciting also.
Was that Salado Black
So
Friday?
yes,
How
yes.
was
That was
that? Is there
it
like a
was
concert?
wonderful. It
Yeah.
was wonderful. It was so exciting. You can see everything. There was music, there was dancing, and I met also a lot of people there. So it was
Yeah.
so super fun also. So Sander, what is pride for you?
Well, I mean, like being a gay man myself, perhaps now after so many years, sometimes you forget um, what pride is all about. In fact, actually, to be honest, like last year, right? My partner Ole was like, oh, it's Pride. It's the Pride March in Hanoi this weekend. And I was like, why will you want to go? And he's like, obviously you have to go because you have to support the local community. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, okay, fine. I'm sorry. So, because like actually after all these years, to be honest, Pride for me sometimes is just about having a nice, fun party, right?
Mhm.
But we forget that the origins of Pride is in the struggles of
Mhm.
people who have helped us become proud of ourselves, and we obviously have not gone through those same struggles that they have
Mhm.
30, 40, even more, 50 years ago, right? But like I remember that pride for me really was about just literally being proud of myself,
Yeah.
because we belong to, or I belong to a generation wherein being gay was not yet so
Mhm.
accepted. I mean, I grew up with people, with gay people in my generation who have just come out of the closet just recently,
Mhm.
and I'm already 38. And the
Mhm.
fact that you're just not comfortable telling people who you are or what your preference is, it probably boils down to the fact that you're not proud of yourself 100%.
Mhm. Mhm.
So for me, that's what pride is all about: being comfortable and being proud of yourself and
Mhm.
just telling people about who you are and what you're all about and what your preferences are without the fear of being judged.
Yeah,
That's what
that's
pride
right.
is.
Yes, that's right. Do you remember the first time you celebrated a Pride?
Oh my God. Yeah.
Mhm.
So, oh my God, when was that? I think I was like, oh, just maybe a few years out of university. I had saved a ton of money from working. And a friend of mine who was living in Amsterdam invited me over to come because I
Mhm.
was planning this big Euro trip for myself. And I was so excited to go to Europe for the first time. And and then I was asking this friend, like, where should I start my trip? And I remember that was in August. I was planning my trip for August, and my friend was like, "You should come to Amsterdam and make Amsterdam your first stop in Europe. No other better place than to start your Euro trip in Amsterdam, and you should time it to arrive in the first weekend of Amsterdam, which is because it's Amsterdam Pride." And it was so nice, Sarah, because like the whole city was just decorated. Everyone was there for the Pride
Mhm.
weekend. Straight from the airport, you could see rainbow flags already
Oh
and
my God.
banners. Even the immigration officer asked me why I was here, and I said I'm here for Pride weekend. And I
Oh.
remember like the immigration officer was telling me, "Don't smoke too much weed." Like, I was like, okay, great, thanks. And it was such a fun weekend. And then come Pride Day, 'cause Amsterdam Pride is so unique because it's what they call Canal Pride, because all the Pride marches are obviously on streets, right? But in Amsterdam, the Pride Parade is on boats in the canal.
Oh, wow.
And it's super nice, and it was such a nice experience because I remember on that day I saw so many like families with their kids, with like the daddies having their kids on their shoulders so that the kids could see the parade. And I was just
Oh,
like, oh my
awesome.
God, this is actually a family event. So wonderful, that was my first ever pride celebration many many moons ago.
Wow, that sounds so exciting.
Yeah.
Wow. Then I remember last time when we talked. I mean, we talk all the time, but I remember one
Yeah.
time you mentioned about your experience working for Spectra and Parents Sleeping Trust. Do you like to tell us about what is it? Yeah, and what did
Right.
you do?
Yeah, so you know how it started.
Mhm.
When I was doing my postgraduate, I was living in London at the time, and I think I was already like maybe like 29 years old or like close to 30, if not 30 already. And then I
Mhm.
realized that, well, I guess I'll be honest now. The real story behind that, Sarah, is that I was already like 29, 28, or maybe 30 years old. And I realized that as a gay man, I've
Mhm.
never ever, at that time, Sarah, I've never ever had my HIV test. I was so scared shit of um, having an HIV test.
Mhm.
Honestly, I just thought that maybe if I had it, I was just paranoid all the time.
Mhm.
If I had it or didn't have it, and then I was scared shit of like just going through like the test and like getting it done and over with, right? And then I was like thinking maybe if I had it, like maybe one day I'll just like drop dead,
Mhm.
right? Or maybe if I don't have it, then I'm lucky, right? And
Mhm.
then I was walking through the halls at school, and I saw an advertisement about a volunteering job at Spectra. And then I called them up. I asked them what the volunteering job was all about. Obviously, back then I already knew that Spectra was an HIV trust, right? And then they invited me for an interview. And then they said that the job was about training the person to actually administer and take HIV tests.
Mhm.
So I applied for the job. I went on training. They taught me how to take an HIV test. We were using like these free instant rapid test kits for HIV. We were trained how to talk to people, how to invite people to take the test. We were trained how to administer the test and take the test. We were taught and trained how to go through a questionnaire and how to be inclusive, and also how to be very sensitive in dealing with clients. And then we were also taught how to reveal the test results
Mhm.
in, the simplest, most straightforward way possible, right? So long story short, I actually trained for the job. I got the job. I started volunteering for it, and then a year later, it became a paid job. They actually started paying me for it. It became my sideline job, and I really, really loved the job. But anyway, to just cap off the story, I was working for Spectra for 2 months
Mhm.
before I finally decided you have to take your own test, and I finally took the test. Of course,
Mhm.
you're not allowed to administer the test on yourself. You're supposed to ask a colleague to test you. You can't test yourself because the rule of thumb is you always have to test with someone. You can't test alone because just in case you get an undesirable result,
Mhm.
you need to be with someone to be able to speak to them and to process the result, right? So anyway, I took the test, and long story short, now having an HIV test for me is routine.
Mhm.
It's routine already. And this is so important as a gay man, to be honest. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I ended up working for Spectra and Terrence Higgins. It was so fun, Sarah, because like if not for those jobs, I don't think I would have known London as
Mhm.
well,
Mhm.
because I had shifts in between classes when I was doing my postgraduate, and I was having shifts every weekend, and all my shifts were spread all over London from zone 1 all the way up to zone 6. And kung pwede lang mag-Tagalog, sir, kung saan ako nakarating.
Oo.
Swear, sir. As in, my shifts were like in saunas, in sex
Yeah.
clubs, in dance clubs, in
Oh.
pubs, in bars,
Mhm.
in hookup points, in cemeteries,
Wow.
in malls. So because of that job, nakalibot talaga ako ng buong London talaga. And I
Wow.
met so many people of different shapes and sizes, of different color, of different backgrounds, affiliation. It taught me to like come out of my shell.
Mm.
It taught me to like talk to strangers.
Mm.
It was such a character forming job, to be honest. It wasn't an easy job at all.
I'm
At all.
sure it would
Yeah. It
be.
was a
I
very
can
fun job.
imagine. So, lastly, we are on
Yeah.
our last question.
Okay.
Um, so how does being a gay man affect how you design?
Okay. Well, I think, Sarah, that question is a little bit very timely also
Mhm.
because so during the pandemic, right?
Mhm.
I had to give up projects because I was living in Vietnam, and then now that
Mhm.
I've moved back to the Philippines, I've just started again to take on design work a little bit, right? And I realize now that when I design, especially for homes,
Mhm.
right? Most usually you're designing a home for a family or a couple, right?
Mhm.
And I feel that as a gay man, I feel like I have the license to say that I understand both people in the couple, especially if it's a heterosexual
Mhm.
couple, because I feel like as a man that I identify as a man, right?
Mhm.
So I understand whoever is the man in the couple
Mhm.
or the husband, right? But as a gay man,
Mhm.
I feel like I also have a special connection with whoever is the woman or the wife
Mhm.
in a heterosexual
Mhm.
couple. So I feel like being a gay man, especially when I'm designing for couples, I feel like I can connect to both parties in the client team, right?
Mhm.
Like I feel like I'm able to listen to both their needs, and I feel like I'm able to also combine their needs. And sometimes it also ends up like, I'm not sure if this is connected to me being a gay man or being an architect, but like I feel like sometimes that I end up also becoming like the couple's
Mhm.
shrink or
Mhm.
confidant,
Mhm.
because like sometimes you'll get a call from the wife and the
Yeah.
wife will say like, can you make my walk-in closet bigger, but don't tell my husband, you know? And then the next day you'll get a call from the husband and say, make sure that my man cave has enough space for a billiards table. Like, and then you try to marry those requests, right?
Mhm.
So I feel like being a gay man, especially if you're designing, let's say, for homes or residences, I feel like you're probably really good at that job because
Mhm.
you're able to connect to both sides in a heterosexual setup. That's how I think I design as a gay man and how being a gay man affects my design process, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Hannah. Before we end our podcast,
Yeah.
do you have any advice or let's say word of wisdom to our audiences you'd like to
Okay.
share? Mm.
So I guess also to just make it more appropriate for the time, which is Pride Month, right?
Mm.
My advice is to just honestly be comfortable in your own skin, right? I know you might be in situations wherein you might be afraid that you might face rejection, right? Or it might be not as easy for you to be yourself. But honestly, just try not to be afraid about being accepted or being rejected, because when you are yourself, that is when the best of you comes out, right? And if there are people who like you and appreciate you for who you are, that's great. And they become your friends and your supporters. But if you meet people who don't appreciate you for who you are, life is too short and you should just avoid those people. Live a stress-free life.
Right, I totally agree with you, Sander, Lakson. Thank you for joining us. And
Thank you,
yeah,
Sam.
talk to you later. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night.
I would like to invite all of you to join our gender team. You can also contribute to Prism project, newsletter, and podcast for gender equality, equity, and empowerment. I am Sarah, and I would like to invite you again to listen in next